We'll call the Town Plan and Zoning Commission hearing of February 28th to order. First order of business, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have the secretary read the roll, please.
Chairman Naito.
Here.
Commissioner Pillow.
Here.
Commissioner Clappy.
Here.
Commissioner Fox.
Here.
Commissioner Payne.
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski.
Here.
Commissioner Woods.
Here.
Commissioner DeCalika. Commissioner Braverman.
Here.
Commissioner Giangre.
Okay, we have a full complement of commissioners. We will not be sitting any alternates. Any approval of the agenda, any changes?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, one item, please add under old business, Newington Ridge Preserve. It was supposed to be on the agenda. It fell off through technology.
Okay, so we'll make that B under,
Under old business, yes, please. Would it be B or A?
A.
sorry.
Yeah,
A.
that's what I thought,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. A. Okay, public participation on items not listed on the agenda. Anyone wishing to speak at this time, come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone want to speak on under public participation? Okay, seeing none. Remarks by commissioners at this time? Any remarks? Mr. Fox.
Yes, just real quick, Mr. Chairman. Last week at the Environmental Quality Commission, which I unfortunately missed, I was watching it on TV, which was a surprise to me for it to be on TV. But Deb Craywick, who presented a report on the Earth Day Subcommittee,
Yes.
was talking about posting some lawn signs. And I remember you saying, that's not permitted at all. Did we discuss anything about, civic organizations, municipal agencies, any kind of regulations pertaining to them?
Yes, we did. When we had discussions talking about trying to set up community bulletin boards around town. We
Yeah, I
talked
remember that,
supposed to go to the council. We've seen no action on that end, but we don't have the wherewithal to go out and start soliciting for this. I think it's a role of the council. I mean, we have the one in the center that's regulated by the Parks and Rec, and we're getting feedback from people that they don't let anybody use their sign.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I got
two. Okay.
I secured the one on the town green for the Earth Day celebration.
Okay, well, that's good. And we talked about also, Mike, maybe going to the Board of Ed and getting them to do a scroll at the high school on the scrolling sign.
I've been
If you could follow up on that, that would be good. But as far as the lawn signs, I mean, we'd be setting well, there's 3 members of the zoning board on the environmental commission, so we'd be like going against the regulations that we just passed.
I agree with it. I just didn't remember. But, I've been having conversations with Ms. Pam Morocco regarding the school department's participation with, poster contests.
If there's any other place that we could put them, I don't see it.
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Public hearings, there are none. Approval of minutes of February 14th.
Make a motion.
Motion made and second.
Second.
Any discussion, any changes, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just going to abstain, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so it would be 6-1 abstention. Next item on the agenda is new business. We'll have the secretary read petition 0118.
Petition 01-18, site plan approval at 3443 Berlin Turnpike. Garrett Homes LLC applicant. Edward S. and Laura Saramat owners. Michael Sullivan, PE, 355 Research Parkway, Meriden, Connecticut. Contact.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
You want to come forward, state your name and address for the record, and we can continue. This is a continuation of what we've already been talking about.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. My name is Michelle Carlson. I'm a licensed professional engineer registered in the state of Connecticut. I'm the Director of Land Development at BL Companies in Meriden, Connecticut. Mike Sullivan works for me. We've worked closely on this application. He can't be here tonight, so I am pinch hitting.
Okay.
I would like to go over, I'm fully aware of what transpired at the last meeting, some of the concerns. We've had BL staff met with town staff yesterday, went through all of the engineering and planning comments that we received. The general consensus, and Mr. Minor can confirm, was that there was nothing technically from an engineering standpoint that we can't resolve with the comments. My understanding is the issue is the pavers and the setbacks. So could we put the drawing up, Craig, that we sent to you this afternoon with our proposed changes? We did talk to manufacturers of grass pavers and EcoTurf, and in a retail use on a daily basis, grass pavers would not be a good application on this site because the grass would never grow. It would be constantly, you'd have cars riding over it, turning on it, and it wouldn't work. We do have some photos that we submitted that show some of the eco pavers in a retail application that's not applicable, that's not appropriate, and that the grass never grows in them. So we have a product that we're proposing that's called Eco OptiLock, and they're interlocking pavers. I do have a sample that I have with me that you can look at, and they come in different colors. But what we're proposing now is decreasing or increasing the green space by 4 feet along the front. Before we had an 11-foot encroachment. Now we're proposing to go from a 28-foot drive aisle to 24 feet, which meets the town regulations. And we can increase that green area by 4 additional feet, which is over 500 square feet, 530 square feet. We also added, as you can see by the corner of the building between space 5 and 12, we removed a parking space and are proposing a landscaped island in that area, which will add another 230 square feet of green space. And then also on the left-hand side, where you see the number 8 with the parking spaces, we had 10 parking spaces there. We reduced that by 2 below the 8 and up above at the other end, adding square footage, adding green space there too for 220 square feet below the 8. And up top by the dumpster, we added another 265 square feet of green space or landscaping. And then we also, to the left hand of the page, where all those spaces are in red, we brought that in another 2 feet. We were able to do that and still have the trucks turn and the movements work, adding another 144 feet of landscaping. So overall, with this proposed plan, we're adding another 1,400 square feet of landscaping to the plan. We've, put the truck turning template on it. All the truck turns move. And this is what we are proposing before you that we'd like you to consider for approval.
Do you have samples of the pavers or whatever you propose to put in that area?
The one that they recommend is called an interlock. And Craig, maybe you could show some of the photos because they look good. They come in different colors, and they basically, you take these L shapes and they lock, and there's space between them, and the storm water, goes down. It also gets absorbed into the product. And then this is just a sample of a different color. I mean, we could put a pattern like that with different colors if you like. We can have one solid color. There's many different options of what we can do. The only colors that they had, they're located in Stonington, Connecticut, readily available that I could grab were these 2, but there are other colors available.
And what's your objection of going with the grass stone?
The grass, if you show the picture, it's not appropriate because of the use. Like if you look at West Farms Mall where they have grass pavers that are used seasonally, that's used seasonally, so the grass actually grows and it stays, and sometimes in the winter it's frozen, so you're not tearing it up. And here you can see these are turf grass, these are pavers where grass grows up in the voids, and that's a retail use that's getting constant traffic, and the grass doesn't grow. And if we went with like a reinforced grass, you know, you're gonna have mud, you know, when it rains, just because of the constant traffic. It's not an appropriate use for a daily retail use.
Steve, you have any experience with this type of a paving situation?
The old style grass pave is kind of old technology, and if there's any sort of traffic over it, the grass won't grow through. So you won't have mud, but there'll be somewhat of a mess there constantly. The pervious paver that they're suggesting to use would be a much better option. It would look better. It is pervious. It's actually built on granular stone typically, and there's a 3/8 stone that gets swept through the joints. It'll hold up great. And actually, it's a 3-inch or 3 1/4-inch paver, so it is a drivable paver. It's the correct paver to use for the site. It'll definitely give you a much better appearance than that old technology would give you.
Okay, but
in
it's
my opinion.
defeating the purpose of the 35-foot green space, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. We've relaxed it to allow you to put something other than grass in there. It should really be grass to the 35 feet. That's what we're trying to accomplish. We've made other people do it. We have applications that we're possibly coming in the vicinity of this that would require the 35 foot, and we don't have the luxury of being able to waive the 35 foot. We don't. There was a court case where the judge doesn't allow us to waive certain things. I'll open it up to the commission for, if you're gonna put those type of pavers, you might as well just blacktop it, in my estimation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Is the building back as far as it can go? I see that there's a wetlands line there. You're 15 feet back from the property line. I think you have to be 5 feet from the back, or can the building be pushed back at all anymore?
My understanding, my interpretation of the zoning regulations, and Mr. Minor can correct me if I'm wrong, we are at the setback line for
Okay.
the building. It cannot be pushed back.
Okay,
Any
so
further.
we're basically 7 feet off.
Correct.
Okay, so how do we make up that 7 feet? Can the building be narrowed down a little bit and make up the square footage on the other end? It might mean that we might lose a few parking spaces, but then we pick up that green space. Is that possible?
We've looked at every configuration with the potential, end users that our client doesn't have a signed lease with yet, but the users that he's working with. This is the minimum size building and the dimensions that we can work within. We can't get any narrow. Once you get less than 60 feet, it's just not, it just doesn't work for the interior layout. I know what you're trying to do. Believe me, we've tried, all different ways. We met early on with, staff and thought we had a plan that was amenable because, the pavers aren't considered pavement per se. They're used in landscaping applications and in landscaped areas and.
I understand it might not be perfect, but I mean, I'm trying to figure out how can you make up that square footage? And that's pretty much the only way, by changing the position of the building or the design of the building a little bit. Basically, you have a postage stamp and you're trying to put too big of a building on the particular property that's here with the configurations and the setbacks and everything. So that's the only reason why I brought that up. Thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners? Steve?
Again, I thought the purpose of going to the paver was to also meet the recommendations of our zoning regulations, where this isn't considered pavement, it is considered green space. It's recharging the ground. I think that's what the green space is all about. Green space is supposed to be all about.
No, it's more of aesthetic than it is for recharging the ground. We have regulations for LID in our regulations that, but this is specifically for aesthetics. And we're trying to maintain the green boulevard look on the Berlin Turnpike. That was the original intent of our forefathers that's why the right-of-ways are so big, and the 35 feet is there to give that boulevard look. If we start compromising it, it's already compromised from zoning because there's a lot of parcels on the turnpike that precede some of those new regulations. And as they come in to the zoning board for changes in modifications or changes of use, we're trying to get them to comply with the 35 feet so that we have that uniform look from the Weathersfield line to the Berlin line. And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish. If the commission feels that that's not what we want to do, then we got to talk about that as a different subject. But we just had an application where we forced the applicant to put the green space right to his front door, and he's under the same situation. The thing I don't want to do is set a precedence that we're allowing other types of materials to come in where it should be grass, and we lose that look.
Was that the app?
The problem is that we know that there's other parcels in the vicinity that are looking to make changes, big changes, and that would be a effect on those parcels also. So if we want to abandon, what's been what this commission has been doing for years, trying to get back to the original design of the turnpike, at least in the Newington section, then we should be talking about that separately. But as it stands now, there's no waiver required. There's no waivers that we could give at this time because it's not allowed by a court case.
Pavers are considered part of landscaping, typically. I mean, it's not pavement per se. I mean, we have 85 feet from the edge of the pavement before we even get to the asphalt
I
along the
understand that,
frontage.
but
I mean,
that's
we're
not-
closing a
that-
curb cut.
That's not your property, that's state of Connecticut's property.
I understand that.
Yeah, and the problem is that we don't know when the state or if the state will ever come in and start widening or doing something in their own right of way. We have no control over that. And we can't use their right of way to supplement our 35 feet. Our 35 feet starts at the property line.
I agree with you. That's why when we met early on with staff and we were thinking out of the box, pavers were typically part of a landscape enhancement that are in landscape designs, and we thought a nice pattern paver would look good with the rain garden and the landscaping that we're proposing.
Mr. Chairman, could I throw something in?
Sure.
Our zoning regulations define impervious surface. It's on page 126 if you have your hard copy. It's a long definition, but partway down it says, impervious surfaces exclude permeable pavement that is designed, constructed, and maintained to allow stormwater to drain through the surface, and then it goes on. So if the commission wanted to, I don't think it would be a torturous stretch of your regulations to consider these kinds of pavers as not pavement.
Mr. Chairman?
But that's not the intent of the 35 feet. It's supposed to be grass. That's what we're trying to accomplish, not pavement. In my estimation, if you're going to go with a paver like that, you defeat the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, and you might as well just ask us to go to the blacktop, the whole thing. I don't see the difference. When you look at it from the road, you're going to see the grass, and then you're going to see two different colors of.
You could ring the whole area all the way around with a paver like a band with a landscaping in the middle, and it'd be a nice landscaping feature. That wouldn't be.
And not how do you drive over it?
No, I'm saying where we have the pavers now on the top, if we rung it all the way around.
Could you point? Oh, thank you. Yeah.
If you took a band of pavers and you went around here within the 35-foot area, and you had a nice landscape area in here, then you have a nice landscaping amenity, like a streetscape almost, with the pavers that encompass the 35-foot, they border it like a frame, and then you have the landscaping in the interior, and you have a nice feature like that. And then it doesn't look like it looks like it's a nice landscaped element. And that's in spirit of the regulations.
if we allowed that here, we'd have to allow it at all the other sites, so it's something you'd have to consider. Steve?
Unfortunately, I don't have my, my zoning book with me. So is it the way the regulation is written, it has to be grass? What happens if the area was landscaped?
Well,
Well,
Okay.
that was the intent of the regulations, and it's always been 35 feet of grass area, okay, which is usually, we used to make them sprinkler it too. And all the way up and down the Berlin Turnpike, it was 35 feet of grass area. And then not too long ago, this commission waived part of it, and then there was a court case that said that this can't be waived. So the 35 foot is something that was in there, and the intent of it was to build this boulevard up and down the Berlin Turnpike, 35 feet in from the property line. And we've held everybody to that standard.
Yeah, the regulation, let me just read it. It's a quick sentence. No accessory structures, above-ground utilities, or pavement shall be placed in the 35-foot minimum front yard
Okay, so
along the Berlin Turnpike.
there's nothing that says that it has to be grass. It could be all landscape plantings, correct?
It just can't be pavement. But pavement is not defined in the regs.
The intent that the commission has treated this over the last 20 years or longer has been that it's an entire grass area and usually sprinkled. So I think that we have to hold to that.
Do you have the landscape plan here tonight? Do we have a copy of the landscape plan? Can I see that?
We have a landscape plan submitted that shows this as a rain garden.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was all digitized, though. Let me
I have a hard copy with me.
Let me see if I have it in here. I don't think that's it, no. No, I don't think I have.
If
I
you
have
could
paper
get-
copies, so people. The landscaping sheet is LL1, it's towards the back.
What's it show?
So there's two landscape beds in each corner.
Yeah.
Just trying to see where the green bed is.
I don't know if this is the right map, because I thought it was one entrance, not two entrances.
Okay,
That is
right,
one
that's the original plan that you're looking at. You don't have it on thumb drive, do you, the new plan?
If we allow it
Yeah,
here,
this
then
shows
we're
the
gonna have to
7
allow
foot in
it
the
at
pavers, right?
No.
The plan that we have in front of us, not the revised plan.
And then they can,
The landscape plan based upon reducing the,
That's why I suggested, you only have to take a little bit out of the building here and add it over here.
the landscape plan that's in your packet still has an 11-foot strip of pavers
it's,
instead of a 7
they
foot.
could do it, it's,
They could do it, it just means that the building's a little smaller.
Yeah, no, I don't have it in here.
Country, they use this in conjunction with pervious, or permeable to need. Look down at this, they use that over there.
Yeah, we've done buildings in Farmington the same way.
Permeable concrete sidewalk, rain mitigation, right?
Yeah.
How big is the sidewalk in front?
5 feet.
What,
Just to the main entrance. You can't. Because then you have to walk around.
You can't. There's a reason to start at 2, you pick up 3 this way.
Michelle, do you know which of these it would be?
3 feet is ADA. It could probably go to 4 feet with the sidewalk in the front. You pick up another foot, now you're down to 6 feet.
6 feet?
Where are you gonna put the snow then?
That's only why I brought the fact
No.
up. I know that you want a 60 by 120 foot building, and I can understand that, but I'm just trying to think, how do you
Understood.
make this work?
Understood.
And pick up a few feet here and there, that's,
Yeah, that's what we've been working on.
yeah.
Michelle, does your PowerPoint presentation that you made for the Conservation Commission have the landscaping plan in there?
That should be in there, yes.
In the PowerPoint?
Oh, and the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Probably not.
All right, because I'm not seeing it on
But
this.
I
on
do
this
have a
drive.
full-size, plan. I mean, we could put whatever type of plants you want. Right now, we have, rain garden plants and lawn out front.
Right, I know. Okay, so he should know. I mean, if we do it here, then we continue it down, down the pike. I mean, if we just, I'm thinking out loud here. We just had an application, not even 2 months ago, where we held up the application specifically for the same reason. And that they complied all the way to the front door of the existing building.
Was that the one where they added on to the building?
Excuse
Was
me?
that the one where they were adding on to the building up the street
In back,
by the Citgo?
on the back side.
Yeah, on Brockett Street, you're right.
But wasn't the existing building still non-conforming, so, but you let them put it, the addition was allowed on there even though the building was non-conforming?
But yes, we allowed them to, they put an addition on, but they gave us the 35 feet all the way up to the door where they had parking in front of the building at that point. And they had zero green space in front of there.
But the building, but the building was still non-conforming over
They
the
brought it
setback
more
line.
into conformity. There was other things that they took off from the building, the side yard, it was overlapping a side yard, so they corrected the conformities, almost all the conformities of an existing
But not all
structure.
of them. Right.
And we've allowed you, this particular property, we've been lenient on some of the, some other areas so that try to accommodate this particular building.
Understood.
Number one is the parking. We've allowed you to take, normally we would take this thing, take the square footage of the building and make you put the parking per the retail regulations. We've said no on this particular case. We're familiar with this type of an operation.
Right.
And we're allowing you to use part of it as warehousing, or you're saying that part of it is warehousing, and the warehousing portion is a less requirement on parking. So that saved you, I think the difference is significant,
Yeah,
right,
about
Mr. Pan?
5 or 6 spaces, yeah.
I think that's what we did with the Advanced Auto parts across the street too, or one of them. I don't care if it's Advanced Auto or AutoZone.
That's an AutoZone, yeah.
Yeah, an AutoZone.
That's an AutoZone she's talking about, the newer.
I think the parking calculation was similar.
No, I don't believe that we've ever done this before where we've said, I'm not sure how they calculated that one, but I believe they have enough parking for the size of the building.
Their building, I think, is set back further too.
Right. Commissioner Claffey?
What is the current green space percentages to what the new structure green space percentages would be?
Well, in that front yard band area, it's a 69% improvement of green space. Because there's 2 driveways, there's the parking that's in the 35-foot setback.
So there's a 69% difference in a greater green space amount from current to proposed.
You're talking just in
I'm
just
talking
in the
about
front?
parcel.
In that
Just
part.
in
the whole parcel.
No, in the whole parcel, no. It's not. It's not. There's more impervious in the whole parcel. In the green belt in the front, in that 35-foot green belt, there's 69% more.
Than right
Green
now.
than right now.
Just for the front.
You're
the building.
35 feet from the property line, 35 feet in. It's 69% more green on the proposed plan.
Than what is currently right there now.
Correct. Right. Because there's parking in the front and there's 2 driveways.
So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to see, we try to get improvements to when, my thought process is when we do something like this, and correct me if I'm wrong, as a planner, you're trying to get improvements if it's, we talked about the nonconformity and less nonconformity. So what I'm looking at is, you have green space now, are we getting better green space, more green space? Or
Yes, there's no question we're getting more than what we have
it's
today.
69%.
Yeah, we're getting a lot more than we have
So what's the
today.
total for the whole parcel?
The whole parcel, there's actually a little bit more impervious because we're going back a little bit
Okay.
into that hill that goes down where all the scrub is,
Okay.
okay?
Gotcha.
But basically up top in the flat area, as you know, the majority of that is on that site. It's all blacktop or messed up pavement.
I got you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Payne?
Yeah. Did you say that the sidewalk was 5 feet wide and could you go down to 3 feet on it?
3 feet gets really dicey from an ADA standpoint. I don't think that would be,
Okay.
you'd want to do that. I think that would cause trouble for people that need accessible use to get a wheelchair around. I mean, that's the minimum.
Well, you're gonna have your handicap parking right by the doorway though.
Correct.
So I would just thought if that worked, then basically you have, 5 feet to pick up. Okay, so if you reduce the building from 60 feet wide to 55 feet wide and extended it to 132, then you'd have your 7,200 square feet of building size that you needed. We would lose maybe a couple parking spaces over on the side. And then we could have our full green space. It's not perfect, but it solves the problem. I know it's not perfect, but it
Yeah,
solves the
I mean,
problem.
Unfortunately, we've asked that and looked at that, but the tenants that are in mind to go here need 60-foot minimum. Typically, a retail is 60 to 80 feet deep for the majority of the users. Yeah. Right. Yeah, usually, it's usually 85 for these users, and we've got them to a 60 by 120, and we can go to 4 feet on the sidewalk. I mean, we are bettering what's, the plan. I mean, we're making it less non-conforming than it is now. The property's gonna look a lot nicer when it's all said and done.
I understand that, and I think a lot of the commissioners understand that. It's just that it opens up a can of worms. We can't just allow we don't have the power to waive the green space, and if we allowed you to do this and change it, then that means it opens it up for everybody else on the turnpike.
Understood. There's also, I think, there's a handful of parcels that are small like this parcel, that when you put the 35-foot on, with what's there now, it's hard to redevelop.
So that tells you then that the best use is the existing use, possibly. Or basically, if you're trying to put a big development on some of these smaller parcels, you can't. If you want to conform with the regulations, your footprint reduces down. So
I hear you. I mean, I grew up in this area. I've been up and down the Berlin Turnpike for the past, 40 plus years, and there's a lot of improvement that's happened. And I think with all the plans that are going on, everything just makes it nicer. I mean, I worked on the Stu Leonard's up the street years ago, and that ended up being a nice project. I mean, I really think that the pavers can be considered a landscape element that could be rung around that 35-foot with a nice,
Not the issue. The issue is the green.
I'm gonna try one more time, Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead.
because I know you guys are hung up on the grass, but what's to say that there's no grass there? And there's grass there right now when they open the building. That's their property. They decide to landscape the whole thing. It's green space though. It's gonna be plantings, correct?
they have to keep it green. What you're saying
I
afterwards?
don't think we have that authority to tell
Well,
them
it's
it has to be grass. No, it has to be green. Green would be a planting bed.
Well, so they're not proposing plants where these pavers are, and the pavers, this commission hasn't taken pavers as green space,
Well, maybe
okay?
it's time
So.
that we need to. I mean, I think they've
You're
pushed the building back
missing,
as far
you're
as-
missing,
I don't
Steve,
think
you're
I'm
missing the
the
point that this commission started with something to have the Berlin Turnpike look like a boulevard, and it started with this 35-foot green space. It would be detrimental to change it now.
In your opinion. I just don't agree with it. I think they're doing everything they can to try to take a piece of property and make it more usable, and still trying to keep within the regulations. I believe they're meeting it with this paver, because the paver is a permeable paver. It isn't.
But every action that we take here affects not just this one particular piece of property. It affects a lot of different pieces of property.
And it's going to continue to get harder because the pieces are going to get more and more difficult.
No, well, we know that. The town is 96% developed. The pieces that are coming in now are all the problem pieces with topographical problems, outcroppings, slopes, all of, what's left are the bad pieces. There's only a handful of good, developable pieces left in the town of Newington. There's only basically one, PD piece that I know of on the Berlin Turnpike of any substance is the 333 Berlin Turnpike, the old electric company's piece. I mean, there's nothing left. You know, you own property on the turnpike.
I hear you, Mr. Chairman. I hear you, and I understand your position. I don't fully agree with it, and that's fine.
Okay. Commissioner Claffey.
Mr. Planner, what, on the Fen Road Starbucks, that was a tight site on a pervious, what, was there any, I don't remember it off the top of my head, you may better, were there problems?
They don't have the same requirement of the 35 feet there.
Okay, but there were still drainage requirements, landscape requirements,
Where's it?
et cetera. What did this commission, like, I mean, you look at that site, I'm just using it as an example, all I see is pavement on that site. I see a little curb, and then it's just pretty much when you walk into that Starbucks site, it's blacktop.
It's the one on Fen Road?
Fen Road, and I'm just trying to use it as there's a small stamp. Here we have from what I'm taking, a 69% increase in visual appearance. We can debate the grass versus tree versus bed versus landscape.
Well, I think the Starbucks may look like it's more densely developed because your eye is sort of ignoring all the undeveloped land to the south of it, which is all part of the property. The developer chose to develop just a portion of it and developed it very densely. And as I recall, he sort of borrowed from his future ability to develop the rest of the parcel and concentrated density on the Starbucks site. The rest of the property, when he does get around to developing it, will have to be less dense to balance the excessive density or increased density of the Starbucks.
So technically speaking, the Starbucks is possibly, the areas around it could technically be non-conforming.
If the Starbucks were its own parcel, it would never have gotten approved at that density, but because it's a small part of a larger parcel, it was approvable.
So we're pretty much fighting the same issue on redeveloping the Berlin Turnpike. Parcels that were granted uses and sizes back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and now people are trying to redevelop those areas. They're kind of caught in the crosshairs of.
You could think of it that way.
I mean, we have both sides of this town has, this problem of, this guy at Starbucks, or the group at Starbucks is technically, if it wasn't in that big thing, is out of compliance.
It would have been.
Yeah, but that's gonna be part of a whole project, so, yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the Berlin Turnpike is a whole project that routinely changes over businesses. And it's always gonna be that in this town. There, look at the 333 building. Who thought that would leave? And now there's 25 acres of raw land now after the cleanup. So the next person that comes in with that big plan, a 25-acre plan, you're gonna have some issues trying to get everything to conform to, and you're gonna be right back to this. And
Well, it only comes back to this if they're trying to build too large of a development on the parcel that they have to comply with our regulations. So if they're proposing too large of a square footage, then yes, you run into that problem, just like down on the corner of Raleigh and Berlin Turnpike, where there was a massive amount of buildings proposed and it couldn't comply. So it would be the same thing. If there was less, if the building was a little smaller, then it would comply with everything.
so the Gateway property on the Berlin Turnpike, is that 100% in compliance to
No,
the
I think they
35?
got a waiver from the previous commission.
Which was illegal.
But what I'm getting at is, there's sometimes you have to kind of weigh, is the glass half empty or half full if you want development in a, especially the Berlin Turnpike, that is not a pleasing sight to look at. And I'm throwing things out there. We're all trying to, I'm looking at it as a building side of the building.
If there was no, the Commissioner Payne just gave him a solution to the problem. If there was no zero solution, then you'd probably have to look at it that way. But there is a solution. But I understand how corporate works.
It's
I
not
understand.
It's not feasible. We looked at turning the building 90 degrees. These are the minimum dimensions. They're not excessive. The property's not deep. The parcel is not a deep parcel. And when you put all the constraints in with the building setbacks, the 35-foot setback, you're left with a very small developable envelope that you can put pavement or building into.
It sounds like that corporate even wanted a larger building, a larger footprint. So basically, the property doesn't fit that type of use with that size of a building on there. So it only fits a certain size. That property only fits a certain size building. And if you can't comply with that, then you're trying to overdevelop the property.
I would disagree.
Where do we go from here on this? This is under,
I mean,
business.
we relaxed the parking. I think if we had to solve the problem, if we lost a few more parking spaces, I think the commission would probably agree to losing a couple more parking spaces in order to help you solve the problem. And we make a couple suggestions. We want to work with you. We want development. We want to hold our standards to a high standard and be consistent with the entire Berlin Turnpike. So I think that it's important to hold the green space. We've been doing it for years. And if there's some way we can figure this out, I made that suggestion, but I mean, we're willing to try to, we've worked on the parking lot, on the parking spaces. If we had to lose a couple more to change the building a little bit, I understand it's a small parcel. We're trying to help you any way we can.
And I appreciate that, and I thank you. And we're trying to, like I said, we're trying to improve upon the plan to give you something that you can approve that works for everybody. And we feel that the pavers are allowed in a landscape situation. They're not considered pavement. So we thought, it's our opinion that that's a viable alternative.
Okay, I would suggest you go back to your client and see if there's any way you could take the suggestion that Commissioner Payne had, Commissioner Woods.
There's no way you can turn that building and make it work and reconfigure the parking, do a east-west configuration, so it'd be turned 90 degrees. There's no way that it works and reconfigure the parking in there?
We looked at it, and one of the other constraints was the line of sight for the billboard, and we'll just have to look at that and reevaluate the height and double check that it's visible. But we twisted this building and had different sizes. There's probably 15 different gyrations of this.
It looks like it would fit. I just don't know if it works parking wise.
I
think you've got your setback,
Yeah,
but you gotta be able to get the parking.
This 120 doesn't fit in that building envelope. It has to get it has to get wider.
that brings up another point that we brought up at the last meeting, was the billboard. We were supposed to do some research as to the right-of-ways and the locations.
There's a legal easement for the billboard, and when it was drafted, the billboard is not in the legal easement area. So the easement language has been redrafted to be put on the record so that the billboard's actually in an easement. There's an easement and part of the billboard's in it and part of it's out of it. So it's just,
What's on the land records now?
what we submitted, what's shown on the plan.
And that's not within the easement?
Billboard's not in the easement per the plan. But the easement can be modified so that the billboard has a easement associated with it, and it's in an easement. Right now, it's outside of the easement.
Right, that's another area where we've closed our eyes to, because that, you know, in the state of Connecticut and the country, well, at least in this area, they're trying, when billboards, if they become, they're non-conforming, and if that billboard for, there was a hurricane and then it fell down, you would not be able to rebuild that. You can,
Understood.
yeah, so.
But yeah, part of it's in and part of it's out of the easement, so it's not all in the easement. So the attorneys have drafted a document.
After
know.
the fact.
Yeah, but it's on file in the legal records. I mean, it's on, I understand, so they're trying to perfect something that's not right on the legal records.
Okay. You answered the question, but basically another area where we're closing our eyes to something that's not right.
I don't think that was done, there was any malice in that. When
Well,
the
I'm
billboard
sure,
went
but
up, the
you
easement
know.
was defined and put on the records. I mean, we've seen, I'm sure you have too, where there's a pipe and the easement's 15 feet on the wrong side of the pipe. I don't think that was malicious. But I hear you. We'll take one more look at it. But I don't,
Well, this is under new business, so we have, what kind of time do we have?
Right, we have roughly another month, because the date of receipt was January 24th, and you have 65 days from January 24th, so.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
no, I mean, like I said, maybe we need to get a legal interpretation of the landscaping. I mean, would that help you be able to have more comfort if we,
Oh, just a minute.
in this
tape.
plan?
Hang on a second.
She needs to turn the tape over.
Repeat what you had said, so it's on record.
Oh, sorry. Would it be helpful to get a legal interpretation of landscaping?
We interpret our own regulations, so I don't think that's gonna help.
Okay, just giving you an avenue to work with us.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is old business.
Oh, no, we have the Newington Ridge Preserve.
Yeah,
What was
that's
that?
under old.
I'm sorry, that is-
That's under old
Sorry,
business.
yes, it is, okay.
I wish it was new business, but it's not. It's old business.
All right. Well, I wanted it on the agenda just to be able to report on it in case the commissioners had any questions, but I don't have much to report. I sent a letter to Massimino Construction, certified, and actually, and at my secretary's recommendation, I sent it certified and by regular mail. And as of now, he has not signed for the registered mail one, but the one that was sent to the same address by regular mail hasn't come back. So it's a good address, but I have not gotten a response from the developer.
Okay, well, if the developer's not here, but the people are here from Newington Ridge. They keep coming to every meeting expecting us to give them some kind of answer. And now the developers, not even responding to this commission. I'm starting to get a real problem with the developer, Commissioner Sobieski.
Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. Did we not tell him he had to show up at a certain meeting, and I thought
Yeah,
it was
which
this
was
meeting?
already passed. It was supposed to have
Okay.
been here in January.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I was correct.
Is that correct, Mr. Fox? You remember that, right? It was, I think, the first or second meeting in January, he was supposed to come. So this is like two meetings away. I don't know. Commissioner Payne.
Maybe we should check with the town attorney to see if he could be served of a notice, by a sheriff that he has to appear in front of us to talk about that project.
I mean, it's not fair to the association of residents there. They keep, they're here, and they come to every meeting, and they're looking for answers. They have legitimate concerns.
Yeah.
They're living with a situation that they shouldn't have to be living with. And we can't even get the developer to come in here and answer some simple questions as to a time frame of when he's gonna proceed. I'm not gonna go too much longer with this before we start taking some action that is not gonna be, if we gotta wait, then we might as well be waiting under us pulling the bond and using that time that he's playing around with us to go through the legal maneuvers of pulling the bond.
Right.
I mean, the commission, help me here. You got something different, you see a different thing here, let me know. I don't want to hurt the developer, but it's not fair to the people that are here. Mr. Woods.
Mr. Chairman, I do agree that it isn't fair. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I know the meeting before that I was at, actually two prior, he was expected. I guess there was maybe some confusion, and he responded but didn't come. But I think it was pretty clear at the last meeting that I attended that this commission wanted to see him. Again, I think I would do is have the planner turn it over to the town attorney and see what steps need to be done, because you need a whole plan. I mean, we could say we can pull the bond, which we have that ability, but there has to be a plan in place as to where that money's going to go, how it's going to get spent. The developer does have rights. It's not going to be a short process. So maybe we should have the attorneys get involved. That's what we have a town attorney for. And I'm assuming that would be where we would go.
Mr. Sobieski.
Yes, I fully agree with Commissioner Woods, but my question here is that even if we were to take this over and put the binder course in and the top coat on, he comes in and develops his lot, he's gonna be ripping the heck out of that road that's finished. So my question is, if we did put the binder course and the top coat on, is there some way to prohibit him from going in and destroying the road? That's my question here.
Mr. Payne.
Yeah, you would put only the binder down until he'd finished the lots, and then you would hold the money for the top course until all the lots are finished.
Oh.
It would be my recommendation.
Okay, I understand that, Commissioner Payne, but I'm asking that we've gone through this now and the guy has never showed up. Okay, so if we put the binder course down, okay, and he says, okay, fine, and the binder course is only going to last so many years before we have to put a final course on top of Class 1. So my question is, okay, so we do the binder course, put the Class 1 on, then he decides, well, hey, I saw lot 10 or whatever it is. I'm going to go in and start bringing heavy equipment and start ripping up the road. Okay,
I believe all the laterals, all the laterals are into the property and everything. So let's say that you put the binder down and he vacates and nothing happens to it. At one point or another, after a couple of years, you're gonna have to put the final course down.
Correct.
Then you're gonna have to notify him that if he does any damage to the road, that, well, the association would have to notify him because they own it. The association owns it. It's not gonna be a public road. So the association would have to notify him and say that if you damage our road, since we just put this in, you will be held responsible. But I think that, I think we're on the right course, as Commissioner Wood said, is contact the town attorney, see if we can serve him with a notice. I don't know if the town planner tried calling him. I would try calling him, and I would leave a message on his phone that it's getting bad. You need to answer this call and call in. We need to have you at a meeting. We're getting tired of not having you here, and so we can get an update. Otherwise, we're going to take the calling of the bond back up on our table. And I think with leaving a message on the phone and the combination of also serving them with an official notice should be able to get him in here and ask him to have a prepared plan on how he's going to move forward.
He hasn't even come to this commission for modification of the site plan that we allowed him to do. He's done modifications, and he's not in detriment to the site plan that's on file. He has never come back and asked for a modification to fill in where the sidewalks are. There's things that he should be doing. I mean, I want to hear from the association. I want to know I mean, they've come here for the last 3 or 4 meetings, expecting to get some kind of an answer, a time frame, and they keep leaving here, coming to the next meeting, and they're just sitting there without an answer. And we're just placating this developer to the point where he's just saying, the hell with you, I'll do it on my own time. But it's not on his time, it's on our time. Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, I have to agree, but it sounds like if we want to get this gentleman sitting down here in front of us, we're going to have to do even a little more, and that would require some advice from the town attorney, then the certified letter, and then a sheriff. I don't know how they do it now, or sheriff or marshal, wherever they do it now. It sounds like he's going to have to be escorted here.
No, we don't have that authority to
No, we
to
don't,
do
but
that.
it doesn't, he's not cooperating, with us at all.
Oh, and
I think
it's-
the
this
last
is
time
what
he was here, I was
and
on
you
the
know
other
what?
side.
This is what the association the association members have said right along. You'll see, and now we're seeing.
Yeah.
So I want to open it up for them for comments from, there's people here from the association. I want to hear their comments, and then we're going to do some proactive action here tonight.
My name is Cheryl Rocco. I live on 23 Deming Farm Drive of Newington Ridge Preserve, and I'm the association president. The situation is worse not as far as the road or it's worse as far as the builder. He still does not have his license reinstated. There are multiple lawsuits against him. There are judgments that have been made against him. He has lost employees because of failure to pay. Word is, and I know it's not anything that you can go by, but it's something that we value because we're grasping for any information. He's not coming back here and could care less. I hate that news, but that's, he has such financial issues, and you could pull it up on the government website and see the judgments that have been coming in month to month to month against him. I like the idea. I don't know if it works. But to be honest with you, if he were sitting here with a big promise, like the Santa Claus letter we saw in January, I don't put any faith in that he's going to follow through with this because of past practice. This is the pattern we've had as individual homeowners. This is the pattern we have as a community. So I did call the town attorney. I did get some information. We have our own attorney for our association. Getting him here to hear him isn't going to satisfy the community. Getting him on site is going to scare the community based on the work. We're at a serious situation now. So what I'm trying to say is nobody wants this to be what it is, but it is.
Yeah. Do you what do you envision if we pulled the bond? He still has lots there. This is what
He does,
bothers
and I
me,
would
is that he
admit-
still has ties to this project, and that bothers me.
Well, what I envision is probably a bankruptcy situation. He's not allowed to come and build on our site or do anything until his license is in good standing. And there has, to this minute, it's not in good standing. And that's going to require him to fix that. I don't know what his plan is. You can't get a hold of him. We can't get a hold of him. So what I envision, what I predict is probably a bankruptcy situation, and those things are going to have to be sold off or gotten rid of, or I don't know. I don't think he's coming back. I think he probably wants to. I think he's going to say he's going to do this, that, and the other thing, but I don't think he can. I think he's so over his head with other projects, and he's in Boston working, and those things are falling apart, and this is a huge situation.
Right.
But, that's not my concern. My concern is safety, our community. We've got a hill. We are in the process of accumulating quotes and getting contractors and professionals out to put to bid because we are anticipating this being put on us. We also understand that this is a private community and a private road.
Private road.
So there's
we would-
rules
yeah.
because of that,
Right.
the way that's set up.
I'd really like to know if the laterals and all the utilities are plugged into the lots.
I saw them.
They're all the lots that are,
Yep.
Commissioner Woods?
Yeah, I think we need to be careful, because and I realize we have the opportunity and the ability to pull the bond, but
Right.
like, we're not gonna do this work. Town forces aren't gonna do this work.
No.
And this bond is being held to make sure the work is done. So this is one I think, because we need the lawyers involved.
Yes,
And the legal aspect, because the
we're
work.
we're gonna end up at that conclusion before this night is over, that we're gonna go to the attorneys for some opinions as to how we proceed.
Well, it gets even more complicated because some of the lots haven't been built on. So how do you go about closing this out? And Mr. Reiner, correct me if I'm wrong, but that bond doesn't get released until the work is done to the satisfaction of the town.
Correct.
So that means either contractor has to lay out those funds, or the association has to come up with the money to meet the same requirements that the planner has of the developer.
Well,
And then
there's enough
funds-
money in the bond to cover, I think there's enough still there, $170,000.
Well, no, I think it's 90 something, but it's,
So it's more than 90-something.
No, it's
It was
$100
almost-
something thousand dollars.
It was
all
almost
right, okay,
200,000.
I'm remembering a different project, sorry.
It's originally 180.
187.
Yeah, I think we need to get the town
Plus
attorney
190.
involved with
Okay.
with the planner and.
I think that's where we're gonna.
And I think that will also bring the association some peace, at least, that we're trying to do what we can with the money and the funds that are available to work with. But I think it's still gonna take quite a while.
Well,
Yeah, but at least we get the thing moving in the right direction, because if we have to pull a bond, then we'll know what our options are, what the town's responsibility is, who's gonna do the work, how we're gonna, how we're gonna appropriate the money. Is it gonna go through the association? Does it have to go through a contractor do we hire a contractor as a town and a construction manager to oversee the project? You would know better than I on this, because you've probably gone through it before with somebody else in your lengthy career.
Actually, no, and I've been reaching out to my colleagues, and I haven't found a planner yet who's actually had to do this. Because usually developers, they push you past the point of no return, but then at the last minute do enough to get you to back off. No, it's very rare that a developer actually gets to the point where a town calls a bond.
Commissioner
You said
Payne
you were
and then
getting-
Commissioner Woods.
You were getting prices. Did you get prices on removing the dirt in the back there and grading, or not yet?
we're in the process of that.
Okay, all right, because that's a big concern. There's a lot of material there.
Concern. It's a huge concern.
lot of
and
material there.
We're actually looking for those companies to give us choices. I mean, we have ideas, but we aren't the professionals. Some of the people have said, well, where would we put the dirt? The whole site hasn't been professionally graded or
We
completed.
have a place to put the dirt.
Well,
We have a place,
Well,
trust me.
they-
If we could take it tomorrow morning.
we were gonna cut a side deal with these guys here, but that was just, we'll do that in the hallway for you. So, but some of the things that you guys are throwing out onto conversation, from the information I've gathered so far, because of our private status, puts a line in the sand. So when I hear you guys say getting somebody to go out and GC the whole thing, according to what I've been told, oh no. So what I would like to know, and I don't know if the answer is here, is there?
What does the association want? You want us to turn over the bond money to
We
you?
don't even know yet.
Or
To be
do-
honest with you, what we want safety.
Okay,
We
so
don't,
if-
we have to,
We'll talk to the attorney and see what our options are with the bond money. That's what you're
And I
saying,
did
right?
speak
I went
to
through this
him.
with the town. When I was on the board, we actually pulled the bond of a contractor that couldn't perform his work. And it was a very lengthy process. And I could tell you this, the money that we wanted versus what money the contractor wanted. Neither one got what they wanted, but we ended up getting most of the work done, and there was a settlement, and the town walked away happy. But it's not a panacea. It's not, you just go ahead, pull this money and.
What kind of bond is it? Is it a cash bond? What is it? It's a cash bond? If this guy goes bankrupt, that cash bond will go right into the bankruptcy courts, and we'll end up with nothing.
The attorney told me, the town attorney told me, because of our private status, it's cut and dry. If we choose to pull it, we choose as an association, you cut us the check, it goes in our account, and you guys go like this. That's what.
Then we got,
You mean if, not if you choose to pull it, but if we choose to?
No, if we choose to pull it. And I asked that. I said, well, why am I going to all these meetings?
I don't see that.
And he said, because you're private, he said, and this is expired, and he's abandoned. Now, there's steps that go on. He said that there's 30 days that you would, Mr. Minor would put the appeal out to him that your bond has been officially called by your association. You have 30 days. He has to go to court. He has to provide direct evidence on making good. And it's not just the promissory email. It's not that. And then if he doesn't do that, the check is cut and it's put in our account, and
This
we're
was
on the
the
hook to
town
deal with
attorney?
this.
I'm sorry, the town attorney told you that?
Benny and Kona.
Okay, I think we
So-
need to have Benny at our next meeting.
I would
Our
love
town-
that.
We'll have the town
No,
attorney
I
at our
agree. I
next
think we
meeting.
need to get the,
Tom.
I don't believe that money can get just turned over to the association. I could be wrong. I'm not an attorney, and I don't want to profess
okay,
to be.
we're gonna get the town attorney in here first. We'll ask him, we'll have a series of questions so that the whole commission understands what our options are.
I mean,
We're not
I think
to-
the commission wants the work done.
Yeah, we want the work,
to be able
we
to
want
get
it
as much of that work
done.
done as
In
possible
my
with the funds that we have.
estimation, I'd love to just say, here's the money and see you later.
See, we don't want that because we're not builders. So this is not
But,
like
you know,
I'm
then
sitting
we,
here
we're
saying
putting the
that's.
onus on the town to be a general contractor or a construction manager, and I don't think that we want
I think
that
it's
either.
their attorney and our attorney, and then they'll feed back to us, and then we either agree or disagree, or it comes out of our hands and it stays in the courts.
Good.
The town attorney and their attorney.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we have the town attorney at our next meeting, and I'm sure the association might bring their attorney at the next meeting so that we can figure this out. But I would still advise you to see if you can get a notice served to them and still do the phone call to them and tell them that there's the possibility of pulling the bond or calling the bond, or starting the process, and put them on notification, because this is a long process, and might as well notify him that he's gonna have to come in, and if he comes in and the town attorney's here and the other attorney's here, then maybe we can get something resolved.
Yeah, but you know, some of the statements that that she just made, puts it in a different light, if those things are actually true. I don't know if they are, I'm taking your word that you've done the research.
If
and-
I
and
understood
fo-
him correctly,
No, I know, as far as his condition,
Oh, yeah,
financial
yeah,
condition and
that's
stuff, then, you know, he could come in here, give us a lot of lip service to buy time. I don't know why he would well, if I was in this situation, I want to buy time too.
If I may too, I think you might want to reach out to the town attorney and make sure that he wants to actually discuss all this in an open session. It might be, because it is legal.
I don't think it's executive.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
I think it's,
well, pending legislation, or litigation, which, well, that's a good point, and that's a good point, and I'll just double check
I
with
don't know
with
the
our
answer,
FOI
but I don't want
expert.
everybody to
Yeah.
come next meeting because the town attorney's
Hey, why
gonna
don't
be
you
here.
find that out
And then-
first, number
and
one?
our
If we
town
could
attorney
do
goes,
it in
"No."
open session, and number two, so that we know if we gotta go into an executive session because of the legal. If we could do, I would prefer to do it in open session. I don't like to do stuff behind closed doors.
Maybe it's a combination of both.
if somebody can just communicate, because, you know, we don't want to keep coming here for this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
So if you could communicate the need for us to attend, we will gladly attend.
Okay, well-
But this is more.
Okay, you have to
heard
stay in
nothing.
contact and keep her informed of what's
Right, and
going
the
on.
best I can do is, like I did the other day, is tell you, I don't know if he's coming, but if he shows up, you probably want to be here, because we never know if he's gonna show up or not.
Well, okay.
That's
Well,
the best we can do.
I'm saying if assuming he's never gonna come back, and you move forward with appointments with Mr. Ancona and whatever's happening, I would like to have information on the value of if we should come or not come.
I think we're gonna definitely have the town attorney, if he can make it, here at our next meeting, so we can ask him questions. And if some of the questions that he can't answer in our regular meeting, then he's gonna advise us that we have to go into executive session, and we'll go into executive session and get the answers that we need to know. So I think that you should be here at our next meeting.
You have some experience with this, we don't.
Well, again, it's a long, drawn-out
Oh,
process. I
I'm
feel
sure
bad
it-
for the homeowners here, because it's gonna get worse before it gets better. And it's never gonna get probably to where you want it, but at least those funds, more than likely, are gonna get spent on that property, hopefully for all the things that you want.
Was your experience in the past with a private community, or was it with a public road?
It was a public entity, so. it
Yeah,
was a
see,
school
that's
building.
where it gets to be, there's no discussion. And he said to me, the attorney said to me, your attorney, not my attorney, your attorney said to me that this was discussed in November, and when we originally came, I don't know who contacted him, but it's very simple, because you are a private community, the law, the rulings are different.
Then he must have did the research at that point, if he's so adamant about what he said to you, if that's exactly what he meant. So we gotta get that from him, right from his mouth to our ears, to find out
But
exactly
that
what was
opens
said.
up a big can of worms for us. We have a ton of questions.
So maybe you should bring your attorney also.
Yeah,
And those are things that
Yeah,
you
my
have
suggestion is to have your,
that's not a good answer.
to have your attorney contact the town attorney. I would give him a little time to get caught up on it, but.
We can do all that, but.
Commissioner
so-
Sobieski.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we get a written opinion from our attorney,
Yes, please.
okay?
I want to copy.
Because this obviously is gonna escalate to the next level. The other question I have is, did you take care of the water drainage in the back of that lady's house, yet she's still getting flooded?
Nothing's been done.
Oh, I thought he did something. Oh,
No. It's
Okay.
actually worse, isn't it? It's worse.
okay.
It's now on the side of lot one, the very
That's
first house. The grading, they changed the
You're
grading.
gonna have to come up and
You're gonna have to
state your name and address, and then we'll,
Janet Chernikoff, 4 Deming Farm Drive. And I'm also the association's vice president.
and it's her house that we're talking about.
Behind my house, but primarily also in lot 1, which is the first house. And as you pull into the complex, immediately to your right, I call it a man-made road, but it's where the dump truck goes up and down. They changed the grading on that when they filled the trenches because he couldn't get his truck up. And now there's a tremendous pooling of water on the side of lot 1 where there never was before, and it's seeping into their basement when it's heavy rains.
There's a tremendous amount of earth in the back there. I don't know if commissioners have seen it. Could be 4,000 yards, depending on how low and how it's cut. And I don't recall what the original design was. And if the association is going to have to do this on their end, they're going to have to try to find a way to leave some of that there, because it's going to be too expensive to haul away. But once you get a machine over there, the problem at your house and your neighbor's house can be very easily corrected. It's just a matter of they've got to move that earth out of the way and regrade it. And then there's also other regrading on the rest of the property.
Well, I think our concern was with this builder who, as of today, I believe is exactly 6 months without a license, because this happened in August. He told me he ripped up my backyard to grade it for the second time properly, and he told me it was fine. So to have him come in to do it again without somebody from the town who we trust more than we trust our own builder to say this is the proper way of grading. So when we if we were to take on our own project, it would make me feel better to have people that are not financially vested into this building just to say, yes, this is what you're, or at least tell us ahead of time, this is what needs to be done. And I think we would feel a lot better that way than,
Well, the engineering department should, or someone from
can do that.
the engineering department should make sure that the grading is done to the site plan.
right, which is
So
supposed to be.
that's would be our responsibility.
We could do that.
We could do that, to make sure that when he does grade it, he grades it to the site plan that's on record and approved.
Yeah. And the person who did the grading, well, the truck,
Yeah.
you know, on the side of their house on lot one, told me, his name was Tony, and he told me that this is not gonna work and that he was gonna tell Michael. He suggested a curtain drain, but of course, nothing was ever done,
Right.
so. And truthfully, if you do need dirt for your project, bring up a truck, we have room. Feel free.
Okay, well, let us proceed with what we have to do, and the planner will keep you informed as to what
Thanks.
progress we're making. As far as the commission's concerned, we're all in agreement of what the planner's gonna do with the town attorney.
Yep.
Okay, you understand what we're looking for?
Yeah, and
for
I'll
the
be
next
talking to
meeting?
Ben before the meeting and make sure he comes. Yep.
It's interesting, he might have done some of this work already, so it'd be good for us to get him here so that we all get it firsthand. And I think Commissioner Sobieski is correct. If we're getting opinions, I'd really like to get them in writing, because sometimes the best intentions, when you get it like a month later, stuff changes. So it's best to have it in writing so that we could refer back to it. Everybody knows what's being said. Okay, we're good on that subject. We'll keep you informed as to what we're doing. Okay, that ends the old business portion of the agenda. The next item on the agenda, petitions for public hearing scheduling. I'll have the secretary read petition 0418. And we'll have a quick discussion and set it up for,
Petition 04-18, special permit recreational use at 80 Fen Road, Montana Knights axe throwing applicant. 80 Fen Road LLC, owner Merle McKenzie, 1183 Killingworth Road, Higginham, Connecticut, contact.
Mr. Planner, you want to just give us a
Okay,
brief?
yeah, I'll just read my memo. It pretty much tells the whole story. This is an application for a special permit to operate an axe throwing venue in an 8,000 square foot portion of the building at 80 Fen Road in the industrial zone. According to the application, axe throwing is a sport in which the competitor throws an axe at a target, attempting to hit the bullseye as near as possible. The staff discussed this with the chairman and determined that axe throwing qualifies as a, quote, recreation use, unquote, under section 3.17.6A and is allowed by special permit in the industrial zone. My comments on it are that the application is substantially complete, so I recommend scheduling the public hearing for the next TPZ meeting on March 14, 2008. If any member of the TPZ would like additional information, such as a copy of the existing site plan showing where in the building the activity would occur, please bring this up at this meeting so that I could let the applicants know that you want more information.
Commissioner Claffey, please.
Yeah.
Is it already discussed on the parking plan?
Let's see, well, let me show. Okay, this is a photo of the property, and I don't know which portion of the building it's going to go in, but if it's important to the commissioners, I can ask him, yeah.
Is that property, isn't it already used for that mattress company in the back? Mattress recycling, the environmental firm?
Right.
No, I don't think.
I don't think it ever
not that
happened.
building, Not that,
That's the other,
It is that building, but I don't think it ever
other
happened.
half of the building.
then they need to come in and be prepared to explain everything that's in the building and how the parking relates to everything in the building.
Well, the applicant won't know that, but I will tell the applicant maybe then to have the owner there or the landlord at the hearing to answer those questions, okay?
And some, I'm under the understanding that the approval that they have already has not been completely adhered to. Is that correct?
I don't know. I could ask the
I believe
CEO.
that the CEO told me that that they're really not completely complied with their original site plan. So we'd have an opportunity to have the owner come in and get that up to snuff too. Now, as far as the parking regulations, we're going by the parking regulations as they stand today for this. We've talked about modifications of some of the parking requirements, but under this application, we haven't made those changes, so he would be required to meet the parking requirements as they stand today.
So
Any comments? Anthony?
So don't we have I guess I'm putting the cart before the horse. Isn't there already a site plan that was approved for that?
Yes,
Okay, that was my original question.
right. I don't think they ever did it, though. They don't have to do it. Okay, that's,
No, stop. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is, they came to us.
no, the owner of the building
The
came.
owner of the building, let me rephrase it. The owner of the building put that other business in there and has changed the driveway and had it approved by this department.
This
Yes or
commission.
no?
Yes,
What's-
this commission, yes.
But really, what we're looking at there is not a grassy, dirt-filled road. It's an actual parking lot that's already been approved by us for the occupant that's in the back half.
Yeah, and I don't believe that all of the work, from my understanding from the zoning enforcement officer, that all of the site plan work that was approved has been done at this.
See,
Right, that's
I'm
what
under
I'm-
the understanding that we approved that because I brought that question up multiple times to Mike about the trucks that sit out there at night. And I was told, well, it's been built to the spec and approval of the site when that occupant was approved. Because the point was, when that first came into us, they wanted to open Holly
Correct.
Street on the back, and then they pulled that out.
Right.
And then I brought the same question up weeks and months after that business started operating at all hours of the night. And I was told by Mike that it's all been approved, so.
We gotta
It's been
be careful.
approved, but I don't
what's the
believe that.
question?
Gotta be careful about what we talk about on
Yeah.
this. This is a public hearing coming in. I think we have enough information for them to come in, and if new questions come up that relate to the other applicant or the owner, then it has to be discussed at the public hearing, because otherwise you could compromise.
Right,
things.
it should be done during the hearing, but I'm still don't know what your question was.
Well, I think
Is-
that he has the right to ask
My question was,
for the owner of the
have we
property to
had-
come in, because this applicant can't make promises
That's
based
my-
on his.
Usually the owner is the applicant.
Well, this is
So
not
this-
the case here.
No, so the owner needs to come in.
If you want the owner to come as well, we can tell him to do that. Sure.
Go ahead.
Wouldn't there need to be a site plan in this packet?
No, because they're not doing anything to the site. They just want to occupy a part of the building.
Well,
If this was a doctor's office or in a strip mall, you wouldn't want a site plan.
Driven by that
No,
that site?
no, I have not. So that's why I'm asking,
so-
what's your question?
with the site,
question
Well, it
it
was a
hasn't,
statement, it wasn't a question.
it's not
I'm looking for
complying
a
with the
question.
site plan. I think that's
If
what he's
everyone
saying.
stopped interrupting me when I tried to ask a question, I might get a question asked.
Well, go ahead, Anthony.
Okay.
Why don't you
That's the
finish it?
No, that's what I'm telling you. I don't know what your question is, which is why I'm asking you, what is your question?
Why isn't there a site plan in this application?
Okay, because there's no requirement for someone who's applying for a special permit to submit a site plan unless the commission wants one. If you want one, and that's what I'm saying, if you want one, I can tell them to provide one, but it's not an automatic requirement.
And that was then my second question on that is that the site plan that's been approved by us for that site, not the businesses that are in it, has already been stamped and signed
Approved.
off on, approved.
Right?
But hasn't been completed.
So what's your question?
But hasn't been completed, right?
How do you sign off on something that's not completed?
Right.
Well,
No, it was approved, but they don't have to do it. They ask your permission to do something, that doesn't mandate them to do it.
Then we say that you gotta do it this way.
If you do it at all, yes, you gotta do it this way.
This opens and operates
And they haven't
on
finished.
that site, but they haven't done.
Then I don't know how
They
they got.
post a bond.
Yeah, I don't know how they got a CO
Here we go back
without
to
bonding
what
it.
was
Did
They may
get-
have posted the bond.
Okay, we gotta know that too.
Well, if you
But I
want
think,
to, it's
I
not
think the owner
relevant.
has to come in because there's deficiencies in the site plan, and that's gonna affect this application as far as parking and landscaping but particularly parking, so that we get an understanding.
So you want
what's
a current site
happening.
plan? Okay.
Yes.
I wanna
Commissioner, go ahead.
Make it clear, I'm not against what's going in there, but I don't want them to get the false impression that they can just go.
Well, they can't, because it's under
No, I
this
just-
section of the regulation is the special permit. They have to come here for a permit. Commissioner Woods, you got a
I
question?
mean, it's a little confusing because we're looking at, I'm assuming, an outdated picture of the property
Right.
from
Yeah.
Google Earth.
Right.
So it appears that there's not even paving there. So I understand the commission.
Oh, there is paving there.
Yeah, but that doesn't,
That's an
that's
old
paved?
picture. That's an old picture.
Yeah.
I'll show you the new
No,
picture.
I realize that, but that's what we're looking at. So
Yeah.
you need to see.
That's why we need the site
Yeah,
plan.
I understand
That we've
that the
approved.
applicant doesn't need to have a site plan for this, but we also need to make sure that there's enough parking
Right.
on
You
there.
hit it
So
right
we
on the
need to
head.
be able to
Yeah,
see it.
That's exactly right, Steve. Commissioner.
And this was presented
Sobieski.
just to show you where in town it's
Yeah.
taking place, that was all.
Commissioner
Just
Sobieski.
a quick question. Is this the old Grody Chevrolet site?
Yes.
Yes.
One of them.
One of
There
them.
was two. They own, Grody and Chevrolet own that building and where the fence company is. They own both.
Oh, okay. So this is where they used to display the new cars come in. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Fox, any questions? No, you're all set with it? Okay. Anything else, Anthony? Okay, so we're gonna schedule this. Would you have the owner of the property come in with this applicant? So
Yes.
that we could get answers to.
Yes.
And alert the zoning enforcement officer of what deficiencies, or at least give us an idea of what the deficiencies are. So when the owner comes in, we know what to ask him. And I believe the zoning enforcement officer probably be here at that meeting, the first meeting of the month.
Yes.
Okay. So have him be prepared to help us with this. There's no other applications for scheduling?
Correct.
Okay. Town planners report?
Okay, a couple of items. First, in my report,
You want to stick around for public participation? Okay.
why not?
You gotta go through the access.
Low lying, open space, low rent. Someone's been working in that other building, the one right when you come off of 9.
Okay, the sign on the tree at Lewis Street, it was brought to the Conservation Commission's awareness that the TPZ would like them to reconsider. It was on their agenda, but at their last meeting, but my understanding was they didn't take any action on it. So that's all I have to say
Okay.
about that.
There was a correspondence from the chairman of the Conservation Commission that said that they were waiting for something from the town manager. He sent an email, which you forwarded to me.
Right, do you want me to speak to that? Because I do know something
Yeah,
about that.
because I forwarded it to the town manager. I didn't know what else to do with it.
Okay.
So,
Well,
You
I
wanna
think,
address
yeah, I think the Conservation Commission wants the town to enforce what they see as a violation of the conservation easement in this sign that was attached to the tree. And until the town takes action on what the Conservation Commission sees as a violation of the conservation easement, they're not looking to do anything else with the property.
was it referred to the council or to the town is it referred to the council? I'm asking our liaisons. You want to come up and, it hasn't been.
You gotta come up to the table.
Come up to the table and just so that we get it on the record, Gail.
As because I was I'm the conservation liaison,
Yeah,
so they asked me to follow up as to why they hadn't received a response to their letter. So I requested that the town manager respond to the Conservation Commission, and she did write a response to the Conservation Commission. Whether they're pleased with it or not, I don't know, but she did respond to them.
do you know what was in the response?
It was basically that upon consultation with the town attorney was correct that For conservation issues, there's no enforcement. I mean, the inlands, for inlands wetlands, they're able to address violations, but not for conservation. So it is in the purview of the administration, and at this point, the town manager chooses not to pursue it. It's a choice, and she chose not to pursue.
So that would help your case. Maybe they'll allow the 4x4 post in the ground.
Well, at some point, I'm just gonna go over there and tell the guy to take it off the tree and put it on the post, and then tell him that Frank Aida said that you could do it, and then I'll take the responsibility, because this is to the point where it's ridiculous. I mean, we have a commission without any enforcement, there's no enforcement. I mean, at least we have a zoning enforcement off, at least we could, he's got someone to yell at, they don't even have anybody to yell at.
But they are pursuing or looking at what other surrounding towns or what is in the state statutes is how they can, what other towns are doing to address this issue, that there's no enforcement policies as far as
Yeah,
conservation.
at this point, I mean, on the opposite side of the driveway, there's a sign that's in the conservation easement. I mean, this is such a simple thing, and I know I could get it resolved. If you're gonna give it another week, if there's no action, I'll take action myself. It's not gonna stay on the tree. And it's obvious he needs some kind of a signage there, and, if they have no enforcement, then we'll put a post in the easement, in the conservation easement. Then it could go back to the town manager and ask her to take it down, and she'll say no, and that'll be the end of it. I don't know what else to, at this point, commissioners, I don't know what else to do. I'm at the point where I'm gonna go over and talk to the owner of the automobile business and ask him if he would take it off the tree and put it on a post in the stoned area like it's supposed to be. At least I get it off the tree.
I think he was willing to do that right up front.
I think he was too, so we
The
can't.
wood was already in the ground, in the tree.
Well, we'll see if there's any other action on it, and then I'll take action. We'll see what happens then. That's all they could do is fire me from my job as chairman.
They'll cut your pay.
Huh? They cut my pay?
I'll make you pay it all back.
Yeah. Okay, and what else you got?
Okay, next item on my report is at the last meeting, I presented a draft of several zoning amendments that I suggest the TPC consider adopting. The only one that resulted in any significant discussion was the parking requirement for recreational activities, particularly bowling alleys. I reviewed the amount of parking at the Bowlerama and the amount of bowling alley parking required by other towns, and I came up with a recommendation attached, which I'll flip to in a second. The commission also discussed the need for letting homeowners know that there is when there is a zoning amendment pending that, if approved, could result in activities in their neighborhood that had never been there before. I suggest we amend the zoning regulations to put the cost of additional notification on the applicant. And let me flip to that.
What else we're familiar with that. What else?
Yeah.
Is there any other, so there's just those two things?
Yeah, just those two things.
When do you want to do it? Can
Well, I
you
need
do
to
it
send it to-
simultaneously?
Yes, I need to send it to CROG 30 days before.
Okay, why don't you do that?
So your second meeting in March would be on March, get my calendar here.
We could do it in April if you.
Okay, that's not 30 days. Okay, so then the first meeting in April.
Okay,
Would
is
be-
the commission okay with that?
All those little
On those
text
two,
amendments?
those two things?
Well, plus the ones from the month before,
Hang on,
from the week before.
in which one?
Oh, there are like about a half dozen from the week before, like the one about not requiring a site plan with every zone change.
Okay, there was nothing there. that
About a
we-
half dozen of them.
We didn't have any objections
Correct.
to those. Okay,
Right.
fine, then let's do them
do
all
all
at
of them.
once. We'll have the public hearing, and then we'll discuss it as a commission as to where we're going with it.
Right. Okay, I have one new item, well, actually last week. You had a temporary sign request from the merchant at 50 Market Square? I'm sorry, was there a question about that?
I had a question on your parking.
Yeah, okay, then let me go to it. Yeah.
Anthony.
One of the concerns I have is how do we, with taking out the section based on the fire marshal's rated capacity, are we giving the fire marshal any, especially in theaters, place of assembly, of those, I mean, the fire marshal's rated capacity could be more than how many parking spaces you have. If you take out so what I'm getting at is, does the fire marshal have any authority then on going from what his regulations state or codes, fire codes, state that there's supposed to be XYZ amounts of people based on the theater size. I don't think we have any theaters left in town, but we could get one at 3333. Are we taking away his authority based on amount of seats, parking, amount of people that could be in a building? You may not want to take out the fire marshals there unless something in his supersedes this. And then I was wondering.
Let's look at this from a practical thing. From my understanding, he sets the occupancy of the building. So if he set the occupancy of the building and then we set the parking and those things didn't jive, that's what you're saying. So we could have more parking or less parking than the number of people that will fit into the building. So have you thought about that?
Right, I covered this at the previous meeting, which you weren't able to be at. I discussed this with the fire marshal some time ago, and he frankly thought this was a ridiculous regulation in the first place because, and I'll give an example, he requires a certain amount of parking. I mean, he allows a certain amount of occupancy based on his world, all right? And he gave me an example. If he rated a building for a certain number of people today, and we use that as our basis for parking, and the building owner came in tomorrow and put sprinklers in, all of a sudden he needs less. Okay, so the fire marshals recommended that we not use him as an instrument to come up with the amount of parking.
How does this go into one space based on 1 to 4, from 1 to 2 to 1 to 4?
1 to 4, right.
How does that? What's the future outlook with these retail and service type uses when there may be a renovation or?
Then the parking requirements would change, Anthony.
So if you I'm use Holy Spirit, that's not in that. That's in.
So let's just
Let me explain why I went from 2 to 4.
Yeah.
I went to a publication that I have. It's about 15 years old, but it lists how much parking is required for hundreds of different uses in dozens of different towns of different sizes all over the place. And there's a wide range of how much parking one town requires versus another town for exactly the same use. It's not even scientific, really. But 4 seats, 1 space per 4 seats, was kind of within the middle of this range of information that I had, whereas 1 space per 2 seats was at an extreme end of the spectrum.
Let's just say that a theater came in, and we set the parking for 100 cars. We're setting the occupancy of that building.
That's
right. Would you agree with that, Steve? Right?
But you look at it.
I mean, we're setting it.
But use a theater, for instance, because if you look at the undeveloped land off Fenn Road, and I remember discussions of making an entertainment type venue or mixed use, we get back into that. How can you fit a recreation / amusement type structure in that? I mean, I just want to make sure we're not decreasing the number of parking spaces for buildings that haven't been built yet that actually need more spaces, and then we'll be back to this. I think it's been. I think you've worked it out.
That's a good point, and I think theaters are a good example. And I'm not being sarcastic. When I say I'm sure that the people who build and operate theaters know better than we how much parking they need. Right. And if our regs don't require enough, in reality, they'll build the amount that they really need. If our regs require more than they need, they'll come and tell us, and they'll ask us to amend the regs to reflect what the market really needs.
Have you talked to any theater owners? Operators?
No, theaters, no.
I don't even know if there's any of them left.
I think they're all downside, but you look at the one in Berlin, I mean, there's that's like a more parking than the size of the building, and I've never seen it full. I just wanna make sure we're not, you know, one in the bush and two in the hay, like, hurting development or
By
redevelopment.
requiring too much?
Yeah, I don't,
right.
I don't think one space for 4 seats is too much. I think it actually still equals.
Because we cut it in half.
Yeah,
We went
well,
from
you
one
still-
for 2 seats to one for 4 seats.
So, I just wanted, because but there's no theaters in town that need to be renovated, because we don't have any left, or they've all closed.
Right.
I'm just looking at what else, place of assembly, does that include churches? Or
Yes.
gymnasiums,
Churches.
schools?
Well, yes, churches. It used to include gymnasiums until I created, or suggest we create a separate category.
And how do you figure on a church? What do you figure in that?
Well, I think church is where this 9 linear feet per fixed benches came from. I think because churches often have, pews.
Yeah.
And so one seat per 9 linear feet of pew.
One
for a
parking
church.
place for 9 feet of
pew,
Of
yes.
pew? 9 feet, you could put,
But you look at Holy Spirit, I mean, there's gotta be thousands of lineal feet of pews, or any assembly. I'm using that as an example, I've been in that building.
Not as big as you think.
Well, lineal footage, 9 feet of, 9 feet from me to Frank.
yeah.
There's
And
a lot of.
you could put more than, you
Then-
could put,
Well,
yeah.
maybe my size, no, but I'm just saying.
On a typical Sunday, maybe not that many, but if there's
Christmas
a wedding, then there might be.
or a wedding, but
crammed in.
I just want to also, when we use the term education in this retail and service type uses, that's outside of Board of Ed education buildings in this town, because a lot of them are under parking. You go to Anna Reynolds, you can't get parking now, and now there's talk of renovation of some of these schools. Some of these schools don't have enough. So is this when you say the word education, or is that like a Kuman Math or a Sylvan Learning Center education, or
Yeah,
a
good-
public education?
Good question.
Because if it's public, we got issues.
Yeah, this regulation has been here for a long time, so I can't say what the author had in mind. But then remember, in Newington, education, the Board of Ed is exempt from our regs anyway. So when a new school gets built, they don't have to comply with our parking regulations. But if it was a private school, yes, we would use this formula.
Do we have
Private
other than
schools?
private daycare centers? Do we have private schools?
Yeah, we just approved one on Alumni
Daycare.
Road.
So
That's a
Goddard
school.
schools, but that's placed as a daycare, or does it fall under education?
Education.
Yeah, I don't remember, but we probably used this
Yeah, okay, that's, I just wanna make sure
Right.
that's a,
general.
okay, and it wasn't
category.
specific to Board of Ed education, which I
Correct.
know isn't.
Which would be exempt, right.
So then we do-
Anything else?
Okay, for this one? No?
Okay,
Okay,
well, let's
so-
have the hearing and then we'll hash it out. We'll hash the rest of it out.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I think you also have to think of other venues, like healthcare venues, places where people go to get healthcare, like emergency care and things of that nature, or nursing homes, potentially, things of that nature. Because they'll require parking, they'll require visitors, and so on. They attracted Dave and Buster's, you never can tell. That'll require more parking.
These are just some of the regulations. We do have parking requirements we do have regulations for doctors' offices and nursing homes and things of that sort. I only presented the regulations that are being proposed for change in this memo.
Okay.
We have regulations on the books already that we're not looking to make changes. These are the ones that we're looking to make changes on.
Just
Mr.
curiosity, the new structure here, will it meet these new guidelines? And I realize the town is exempt, but the goal was obviously to try to.
But as a
to meet
exercise,
it.
They added a tremendous amount of parking to it.
Maybe 100 spots, at least.
I think it was, between 90 and 100
Yeah, but
spots.
you
they
know
added.
that, when you come here, sometimes you can't find a
Got the
parking
library
place.
parking yet?
yes, that was agreed to. Yeah, and in fact, they'll be coming in for site plan approval one of these days.
Because looking at this plan, what I saw originally was this lower parking lot that's here right now was gonna be exclusive for the police department. If that happened, then where we're sitting right now,
It's gonna be
5 feet up,
yeah.
would be a parking lot, but it wouldn't be enough with that and with what's on the east side of the building without the library. Add the library and then we have enough parking.
Yeah, the library adds a lot of parking spaces,
The
enough for,
library's over 100 spaces.
enough for the library and, overflow for the town. And then the parking lot here was another 90 or 100, and then you still have the parking down below. So, and then I think they're talking about adding some parking spaces down by the busway, if I'm not mistaken.
What busway?
The bus area. So there's a possibility that there might be some additional parking there down the road. But I think that they did make a special effort to add extra parking.
Right. One more question on your 7.6.1. The new zoning text amendments or changes.
Oh, yes.
We put notification, but we don't have a time frame. I find that odd with like, usually there's a 30-day window, a 2-week window. Most regulations that I've seen, when you have to give somebody notice, there has to be a specific time. Like, is it 2 weeks, 10 days? That leaves it open like, oh, I put the ad in the newspaper yesterday, that's proper notification. Any attorney would say, well, no, that's not proper notification.
Well, okay, that's a good point, and I was going to discuss that when we had the hearing on it. My thought, yeah, my thought was for the town to do it at their expense, so that way we know it gets published at an appropriate time in the right place, and basically send the bill to the applicant. That was what I was going to say when we got to the hearing on that.
You understand what we're talking about, Steve? Stanley, you know what we're talking about. You understand, because Mike, your notification, I mean, it's gonna be important, it's gonna be an important issue if we get into situations where.
Unfortunately, it's a losing battle.
Huh?
I said, it's a losing battle, because no matter what venue you choose, it's never the right one. You never seem to get the message out there, and that's what we get accused of. But you just do the.
Yeah, well, at least we have something to fall back on when someone comes in after the fact and says, well, we didn't even know about it, and I could say, well, it was in this publication, there was 2 articles on the newspaper, I gave comments, the town planner gave comments, gave information, but at least we have something to fall back on. We can't just say, oh, didn't you read the legal notice for it's in Braille, you could read it.
And I think that the toughest area is dealing with all the residential property, because there's so many of them. And that's why a few years back when we talked about the 2020 plan, and a lot of people came out and they were upset that they didn't realize what was happening, that we talked about as a commission that we would put a notice out in with the tax bill to reach those people when we do talk about the 2020 plan. So maybe there's certain applications that might have to go to that extreme, and then there's others that will use other avenues, depending on what's being proposed to change, whether it's just being a change to a PD zone, or if it's a change to, let's say, a drive-through, or a change, depending on what it is and what it affects. So I think that all the notifications are going to be a little different, and it would be to the satisfaction of the commission, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Okay, so the last item, if I can find it, there it is. Okay, you remember last week, the owner of the Casey's Golden Collectibles wanted to put up a temporary sign in front. Okay, he has agreed to put his temporary sign near these, these 2 metal pillars within 5 feet of the door.
Okay.
The sign that's on the roof there, which he said he couldn't use because he claimed that it was a
violation of some
violation. But it doesn't appear like they're going to take it down. So instead of having a
I don't want to encourage him to put any signage there, Mr. Payne. He's asking for this kind of signage. I don't want to start telling people, wow, you still could put another 30 feet. Why don't you stick a sign? I mean, it's up to them to come to us and request it. I don't want to start telling businesses, well, you got enough linear footage you could start adding signage. It's up to him. That sign is an illegal sign.
Well, then it should come down then, because it looks stupid up there. It just sits up there on the roof, and if it's illegal and the tenant can't use it.
It's illegal.
If it's illegal and it's not supposed to be there and it's not supposed to be on the roof, then it should come down, because it's an eyesore. And if you're not gonna intend to let them use it, then it's an eyesore. Then, and it can't be used. It can't use it because it would be non-conforming and it would be against our regulations. Then you should ask the property owner to take the sign down, the frame.
We could do that. We could ask him.
Have Mike tell him that it's non-conforming and it should take it down. And see if we get any action on it.
We can do that. And if I can go back to the agenda, yep. And that's all I have for my report.
Okay, good.
Oh, I'm sorry, communications, I know you want to go home, but so do I, but, under communications, I just became aware of a, a bill that's been proposed in the legislature, an act establishing accountability for fair and affordable housing through zoning regulations. There will be a public hearing on this on March 5th. I imagine lots of agencies are weighing in on it. The item that caught my eye, it's on the second page, under paragraph 2, the second paragraph 2, the paragraph that begins with be designed to A, lessen congestion. If you go to the bottom of that paragraph, there's a new item H, to affirmatively further fair housing. So your regulations have to affirmatively further fair housing. That's a new buzzword that's been kicking around the last couple of years, affirmatively further fair housing. It was the subject of a Supreme Court decision a couple of years ago. What does it mean? Well, let me give you an example. Your regulations currently allow for a wide range of housing types, which you are required to do by Connecticut state law. You provide for duplexes, you allow accessory apartments, you do allow multifamily in areas of town. You have rather small lots, so you're not like a town with 2-acre zoning. So nobody can say that Newington zoning regulations don't do a pretty good job of providing the opportunity for lots of housing choice. But do we affirmatively further fair housing? I don't know. If we had a regulation that required a 10% affordable housing set aside, okay, that would be an example of a town affirmatively furthering fair housing. But simply providing the opportunity for fair housing, I think is no longer sufficient. I think that's where this is all going. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention, and I'll keep an eye on it and let you know where it goes.
Okay. Is the council going to do anything with this? Do you want us to make a recommendation to you that we think this is ludicrous? And then as a group, as the council and the zoning board, through the council, we send word to our legislators and people that were totally against this, that we've tried to get as close to the 10% as humanly possible. Our housing stock is a good portion of the northern part of this town is pre-war housing. The houses are small, they're affordable. We were 96% developed. There's no more land to do this, and come out in a timely manner before this thing gets any legs, and send a message to our people saying that we don't want this. So what do you want from us as a council? We'll send it to you. We'll get it to you in a week. Yeah, want to talk about it? This is too important to just say, well, yeah, we'll leave it in the hands of these guys up there in Hartford. Forget it.
No, we're not. Don't have anything to do with it. On the back page? Now, I just skimmed through this. I haven't read it yet, but it says a municipality by vote of its legislative body or by town meeting may opt out of the provisions of this section. Which section? Subsection J? Of the whole thing?
Provisions of the subdivision 5. Well, they made a change here. I don't, without getting
I read the whole thing.
it.
Craig, have
What
you
do
read
you
the whole
interpret it as?
I'm just wondering, can we as a town, after holding a public hearing and everything, can we decide to opt out?
Okay, until you said that, I did not know that there was opt-out language in here. Where is it?
It's on the
last
back
page
of the
you
page.
said.
It's on right above that, right there.
Okay, yep. Well, it looks like it.
Opt out of the provisions of this section and the provisions of subdivision 5.
Yeah, subsection. Yeah, I have no
what is
idea.
that stuff?
I'd have to parse this to know what in the world.
Can you do
yes,
that?
I could do that. I'll do that tomorrow.
That would make me feel
Yep.
a little bit better
Okay.
if
Yep.
we're able to opt out after.
Even if we can't opt out, we're going to opt out.
No, right. No, but yeah, we would appreciate.
I think you gotta read that very carefully, because there was an article in the paper the other day about this. And the reason that this is being introduced, one of the reasons is that the governor is, feels that the carrot approach is not working to furthering his goals of affordable housing. So in here is actually.
For a guy that only has a couple of months left in his term,
Well, yeah, but
I mean,
that's-
he's trying to push through a lot of stuff that
But
he
there
should
is-
leave
there
to
is-
somebody else.
There is a penalty in here for non-compliance in terms of withholding state funds and grants. So if the opt-out, perhaps if we opt out, we might be subject to the penalty. So I
Yeah,
think
good
that-
point. We need this whole thing killed completely, so.
Absolutely.
So a letter from TPZ going to council on the
Then we'll
reasons,
forward
and
it
then you
to-
guys take the ball from there.
And then go to respective.
But this is very, this is very,
Something for
Yeah, I'll
me to
draft that
sign.
for you to sign tomorrow.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
this has financial impact for our town in
Right.
terms of.
And we'll get it to the council right away.
Our
and
next
then-
meeting is
yeah.
on the 14th.
Yeah.
So,
or the
yeah, so that
13th.
We'll do that this week.
Yeah, so that you guys can take some action and get in, because we got what, 4 legislators that we could talk to? I'm sure other towns are looking at this the same way we are. They gotta be.
Well, I'm sure Rocky Hill, Weathersfield, I'm not so sure of New Britain, where they feel about that. So it's kind of hard when you have a state rep that represents Newington and New Britain.
Commissioner Woods?
I mean, I think it would be hard pressed to prove that we were guilty of anything but affirmatively further fair housing in this town. We probably more so than Rocky Hill, Cromwell, Weathersfield, and we offer a lot, I believe, of
Different housing.
Opportunities.
very, let's say, starter homes for,
Yeah, I mean, with the whole
blue-collar worker.
pre-war,
Yeah.
post-war housing was all on 50-foot lots, and
Right.
we got a whole section of the town, the whole north end of the town is built that way.
And in addition to, fair and affordable housing, Newington, we have the Veterans Victory Way, which is, a very unique for homeless veterans, whatever. So we're doing our fair share. We have a lot of group homes. So our housing stock is not only for affordable housing, but it's also for those who need alternative types of housing. I think we do a fair share.
I think the push from the governor is to try to placate the cities, the city of Hartford, the Bridgeport, New Haven, Waterbury, the big cities,
Yep.
and try to dilute the diversity of those cities. And you dilute it by
Spreading
spreading it out, and hopefully he's looking to, like in the city of Hartford, I think his vision is that it's gonna be a mecca for millenniums, and you can't do that with the population as it stands now, so you
Let's
try to move
push it into
that
the
out.
suburbs.
And, it's a whole conglomerate of different things, but I think that's where he's coming from. But that's all well and good for the city of Hartford and New Haven and
Yeah.
Bridgeport, but what about the suburbs? I mean, we're doing our share. We're at what, 8%,
8.3.
8.3%. I mean, we're getting close to the,
exceeding.
huh?
I think we exceeded compared to our surrounding communities.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Oh, we
sure we
do.
do.
Oh,
I bet
close
you,
to
I
10.
bet you some of the surrounding towns ain't even at 5%.
Yeah.
And they have land to do it on. We don't even have any land to do it on.
We're totally, yeah, so please do the letter, get it to the council.
Okay,
and
we'll
act on it
he'll
on
get the
13th.
letter, I'll come and sign it, we'll get it up to you right away. We
Yeah.
gotta work on this together, because this cannot go.
No, absolutely not. I'm glad you picked up
Well,
on
but let me
this.
just say that because Newington is already doing a lot, I think Newington has less to fear that this law is gonna make you do things differently than the Westons and the Stamfords and the towns with 2-acre zoning and no multifamily housing. They're the ones that really need to be worried about this. You guys not so much, because you're already doing
Yeah, but we can
your
help them
fair
out
share.
by trying to kill
Well,
it.
but towns should provide their fair share. There are a lot of towns that are nowhere near even what Newington is, and they should have their feet held to the fire. And this will do that. I don't think it's gonna hold your feet to the fire, because your feet, whatever the analogy is.
Well, it doesn't say in here that the town of Newington's exempt from this, so.
You already do it. You
Yeah, but
already
we don't do it to what he might perceive as his satisfaction. He might want 15, 20%. Then where are we?
Well, that he can't do, but what he could do is define what affirmatively further fair housing is, and
It would be nice to know what that definition is. My
Yes.
guess you won't be able to get anybody to define that.
Well, the Supreme Court, there was a major decision based on this very phrase, and so there may be an answer to that, and I'll look
to
into
see
that, yeah.
No, I'm concerned too, is he might want affordable housing around the busways.
Well, that's exactly where he's going.
So I don't care if, we meet it, but we don't meet it to his criteria.
That's one of the reasons why last night we,
I mean, he's basically came out and stated that he wanted, that there's opportunities in the busway to do, that type of housing, so that he could build the ridership for his busway that doesn't work. That's what he's trying to do.
at the town council, we told Andy Grecker to go ahead with the hotel proposal. Because we was waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and if that hotel, decides to just go bye-bye, the only other person or agency that had any interest in that site was,
Affordable housing.
right.
Yeah, it was affordable housing.
Was affordable housing, yes, we know that, that's why we were
pushing
talked
for
to
the hotel.
Andy about that at the time,
Be
I told
pushing
him
for the
that
hotel.
he better push for the hotel, because it's gonna be hard pressed to.
Right, so he's already made the phone call, so we're gonna hopefully get the gears in motion.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the, parking garage is concerned, you can't wait for the DOT,
Well, we
don't
didn't
have-
get the grant, we got denied the grant.
Okay,
We'd applied for a grant to underwrite the cost of a parking garage, and we didn't get it.
so that's not even, I mean, we're trying to help the busway by giving them a way to have parking, so they're not parking up and down on the street. And they're,
Right.
I mean, they're defeating their own purpose they're defeating their own purpose, unless they're gonna acquire land from, Hayes and put parking on that. If we go ahead with with the hotel without the parking, they're basically in a lose-lose situation. You can't build the ridership because people can't park their car there.
I just hope that they don't park their cars in the hotel parking lot.
Well, I'm sure that the
Yeah, I
people
know,
that
but
run
the
them
people
hotels
will do it.
are not gonna allow, they're not gonna build the parking lot and let commuters use it as their,
Yeah, we hope not.
Commissioner Woods.
There obviously is a huge market right now for apartments. It's for whatever reason, this millennium generation, that's what they're looking for. I don't think it's ever gonna be an issue in this town, because we're built out. We don't have really the space for it.
But in that same vein, that they're looking for basically to be city dwellers.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
If you go down to, next to the building where the, Yukon is.
Yeah.
So next to the old Times building.
Yeah.
That's an apartment building right now, and I think the average age in there is like 24.
Yeah, and it's probably all built out too. It's probably,
And they're all young professionals, that are gonna be there for 3 to 5 years. And my company is doing a tremendous amount of work out in the Farmington Valley, and as fast as they build apartments, they're filling them. And the rents are between $1,800 and $3,000 a month. So there's high demand. I don't see it being a huge issue for us, just because we're pretty much built out. And we'll see what the state and the government does with the train stations, if in fact the rail does come through like it's supposed to. There obviously is potential there.
To support really any argument, because along that line, there's been very many studies that done that, yes, the millennials, that age group want an apartment, whatever. But once they start a family and start having children, they do want their own single family. So,
And I don't want to get too far off track here, but, I'll be turning 65 this year, so there's gonna be a big housing stock that's gonna open up in another 25 years when the baby boomers start dying off. The population coming up behind us is not as big, so it's gonna be interesting, what communities go through in the next 25, 30, 40 years. There's gonna be a difference. It's gonna change,
no, I think you're right.
my opinion.
You're absolutely
absolutely
right, because even in the 2020 plan, it showed that the housing is aging drastically here in town. So it's too bad we don't have a lot of facilities for that group. That's where we're hurting.
Okay,
Can I ask a
Carol,
question?
go ahead.
Do you have any idea when you're gonna start talking about the 2030 plan?
Yes, we're gonna start talking about it, as I recall, I figured, towards the end of this year. I put in money in the capital budget for next year to hire the consultant next year. So we'll need to start talking about who we want to hire to help us with it and do some other planning. So I'd say in the next 6 months or so, six or 8
I'm
months.
just wondering, because you have tax bills that are going out in June, and then you're gonna have to wait to June of 19 if you're gonna put any notices in the tax bills.
Oh, I don't think we'll be doing that. That kind of outreach will be much later.
Okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure that we don't miss a
Yep.
deadline.
You're familiar, you went through it with a couple of us that were here at the time. Do you think that there's a lot of changes that we have to make? We made so many changes at the last time. I mean, it's basically housekeeping at this point.
Exactly.
Wouldn't you
And just kind of
wouldn't you agree to
updating
that?
and, absolutely, and just
Yeah.
updating and, you got
I don't know if
Mascoli.
we even need to hire somebody on that, whether we could, there's a lot of areas I noticed in there that we just have to take things, they've been completed already.
Right, and you just
And
cross them off.
cross
And
them
there might be
off,
a couple ideas
And
that
maybe a
residents
couple,
have.
throw a couple new ideas out, but I don't see anything major changing.
Right.
And,
mean,
and
we
there are
went
some
through-
new requirements that the state threw in that weren't there 10 years ago, but just one or two.
So, I mean, because I had asked you this question before, if you did need a consultant to come in.
Well, I'll always recommend we hire a consultant because then he'll be able to help me do it. But your point's well taken that we probably don't need to do anywhere near the level of upgrade or rewriting as we did 10 years ago. We could probably just
Maybe we need
revise it.
somebody to just,
Type it.
yeah, a real short period of time to help him a little bit, give him some ideas, and then
Yeah.
we
Make sure you make
send
all
him
the
on his
sketches.
way.
Right.
But we're probably gonna need somebody, but we'll try to keep the expenses down.
No, I
and
mean, the
not do a
money's in-
full-blown, like
money's
we
in
went
CIP.
through.
Oh, we went through
Christ, we
full
went
blown.
through over a year.
And the money's gonna be in CIP for it, so.
Okay, great.
Well,
Anything else?
Hopefully, we don't have to keep the public hearing open for 9 months,
Why not?
you know.
Got anything else you want us to look at?
I just, in terms of this, it doesn't have a couple paragraphs about Trap Rock Bridge development.
It does or does not?
It does.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So if you, I think that impacts us, so if you can pay attention to that.
Okay.
We just got this tonight, so it takes,
That's what I'm saying, I
I
brought
have
that
to
up 'cause I
digest
wasn't-
some of it, and some of it, they refer you back to all these different sections, and I don't even know where the hell we find those sections, so there's other codes and stuff that they refer you to.
Yeah, I need to parse it to make it make sense.
Okay,
Okay.
all set?
All set.
Thank you.
Good,
Thank you.
thank you. Communications, we're all set with. Public participation, we're all set with that. Commissioner remarks, Mr. Sobieski.
Yes, I just got another update from CROG. Came in yesterday. I'll get it out to everybody. I firmly believe whatever I get from CROG, everybody should see.
Yep.
So,
We
okay, if you have any
appreciate it.
questions about it or anything like that, let me know or contact Mary Ellen. She's pretty good at getting back to you.
Thank you, Stanley.
Any other commissioner remarks? We all set? I have no closing remarks. Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.